The northern boundary of the Roman Empire ran right across what is now Europe, along the rivers Rhine and Danube, plus, in Britain, Hadrian's Wall, marking a sharp north-south contrast, not just in political allegiance, but in culture and the economy, which outlasted the end of the Western Empire by centuries. The Roman world had many internal differences, but on one level it was strikingly homogeneous, held together by roads running between a network of cities with often remarkably similar public buildings, largely in stone. Cityness, civilitas, with all the undertones of civility and civilization which the Latin word still conveys to us, defined the elite Roman self-image, an education in classic Latin literature, Greek literature in the Greek-speaking Eastern Empire, and the ability to write elegantly formed part of aristocratic status. Quite as Roman was extreme social inequality. There were still many slaves in the Roman world, and the differences between rich and poor, and the snobbery attached to those differences, were acute. All formed part of the complexity of the Roman Empire in every period. Now that the empire was Christian, which it had become, at least in terms of its governing elites, in the 4th century, Christian religious literature was added to the mix, and bishops began to rival senatorial aristocrats in influence. But not much else changed in this respect. Few Christian theologians, for example, notwithstanding the egalitarian imagery of the New Testament, ever thought slavery was wrong. The contrast with what the Romans called the barbarian world to the north was considerable. There, the economy was far simpler, and so was local material culture. Political groupings were much smaller and simpler too, and often indeed very fluid, with identities changing as different ruling families rose and fell. Immediately north of the Rhine and Danube, most of these groupings spoke Germanic languages, although none of them, or the Romans themselves, saw this as marking any essential homogeneity between them. I will use the words barbarian and Germanic in what follows for convenience only. Not surprisingly, barbarian peoples, especially their leaders, were very interested in the wealth of Rome and tried to get some of it, either by raiding, even invasion, or by taking paid service in the Roman army. There was a grey area along the frontier, more militarized on the Roman side, more influenced by Roman styles on the barbarian side as a result. But broadly, the boundary marked by the two great European rivers was a sharp one. What happened in the 5th century in the Western Roman Empire, put succinctly, is that barbarian incursions from the north, although they had been a feature of most of imperial history, this time led to political breakdown. Armies which did not call themselves Roman took over the different western provinces and carved out kingdoms for themselves. In 400 none of this had started yet, except in the Balkans, where Gothic groups were trying to settle and trying to integrate into the Roman army, after fleeing into the empire from attacks by steppe nomads, the people whom the Romans called Huns in the 370s. By 500, the Balkans, in the Eastern Empire, were under Roman control again. The West, however, was very different. There, a sector of the Goths, called by us the Visigoths, controlled Gaul, modern France, south of the Loire, and most of Spain. Another sector, called by us the Ostrogoths, controlled Italy and the Alps. Burgundians controlled the Rhone Valley. Vandals controlled North Africa, modern Tunisia and Algeria. A set of small-scale Frankish kings controlled most of northern Gaul, and southeast Britain, a province actually abandoned by the Romans already in the early 5th century, was in the hands of tiny-scale tribal communities called generically by us, and perhaps by themselves, Angles and Saxons. There were others, too, in smaller areas. Territories of the former Western Empire which were not under the control of military elites, originally from outside its borders, were very few and scattered. Mauritania, roughly modern Morocco, parts of the Central Alps around Kër, and Western Britain, particularly Wales, plus Brittany. None of these had any link with the others, still less with the Roman Empire in the East, and they lost a Roman identity fairly quickly too.